There's certain times you've just got to squash a problem before it gets started. So I'm at home today doing a restart. Just happened to get a load back to the house. Had an interesting situation pop up the other day, and it got me to thinking about knowing when to stand your ground and stay firm with what you're doing, and knowing when to pull back. You don't have to win every fight. And I got in an argument with the dispatch this last week, and it really got me thinking about this. You know, it's, so when do you need to stand your ground? Well, I'll lay out the scenario and explain to you. Now, it's important to remember that when you're dealing with dispatch, you're dealing with personalities. These aren't nameless faces on the other end of the phone. These are real people with real personalities, real likes, dislikes, the whole ordeal, just like you. Even if you don't like them, they still got their thing going on. So when you get to know somebody, you start learning their quirks. And dispatchers are no different. So we get a new guy, and you know, like the old song by The Who, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. He starts trying to flex. No. And he gives me my loads. He says, I got this load you're going to pick up here outside of Indianapolis, take it up to Wisconsin. I got you another load going to St. Louis. I said, absolutely not. We don't do St. Louis. But I didn't do St. Louis for the reasons that you think. True, it is a dirty, nasty black hole that nothing productive grows out of. It's just a horrible place. But there is some money to be made there if you know where to go. But when these particular loads start paying more than usual, you know there's a catch. Truthfully, a lot of these loads that go to urban areas, I tend to just turn down. I've done my time in those. From LA to New York City and Cleveland, Chicago, Milwaukee, Atlanta, Montgomery, Memphis, Nashville. I've done lots of them. Cincinnati. Oh, Cincinnati's a great time. So a lot of these loads, especially ones that go to places like St. Louis or Montgomery, I'm just, yeah, I had to get out of the Army and go to Montgomery to get shot at. So I was like, no. And the assistant, the new guy, tells me, well, if you don't do it, you're just gonna sit. I was like, and I said, okay, have this guy call me, and I just hung up on him. I was like, not arguing with him. 30 seconds later, the other guy calls me, the main guy. And he said, what's up? I said, oh, this is St. Louis. I said, that ain't happening. Now, the one thing I don't think he understood that I knew was that coming out of St. Louis, we don't have a whole lot of freight. We get out of there. Chances are I'm going to be deadheaded 200 plus miles. He's like, well, this load pays $3.15 a running mile. And I said, no. I said, it pays you $3.15 a running mile. I said, it pays me this. And then he laid out, you know, his number. And I said, actually, it's going to pay me this. And when you take the fuel surcharge out of it, it's going to pay me this. Well, he went into full used car salesman mode. He was trying to sell me. He was trying to hustle me. And I've had this problem with this guy before. He's a hustler. Unfortunately, if you'd ever met my mother's family, we are all salesmen. I come from a whole family of salesmen. It's not a joke. Car salesman, house salesman, just, yeah. Yeah, you know, truthfully, if the force had it's the other way, I would have been selling used cars in Anaheim. Now, I was getting ready to just say, you know what, I'll do it. It was out in the suburbs, all that, until he said one thing. And we all have that one thing. to where you have to just stand your ground. And he said to me, I don't know why you're leaving all this money on the table. And for some reason, it just hit me wrong. And I just flat said to him, what I choose to leave on the table is not a conversation you and I are going to have. Which basically, I shut him down before he got started. I don't need, if I have to be sold a load, I don't want it. And I stood my ground, and he said, well, then I guess I don't have anything. I'll have to talk to you Monday up in Wisconsin. I was like, oh no, I'm going to end up at the truck stop with a restaurant and a bar all weekend. Shocker. Yeah, that was, so I was just fine with it. And you have to be fine with your decision. So I decide I'm fine with it. I'm going to just go have a nice weekend. Hang up, go get my load, take off. 3 hours later, they called me. 3 hours later, they called me and had another load that came up. A guy couldn't get it, and I didn't argue with him. And this is where discernment and discretion comes in mind. I could have been stubborn and said, no. You wanted me to sit? Screw you, I'm going to sit. But I knew, railroad tracks. I knew that that load that I was getting was going to take me out of his area, put me back into a good area, and I'd still continue making money. And this is where sometimes you have to stand your ground to a point and then give in on your terms. As I've said before, you are the captain of your own ship, and you work on your terms. I mean, if you own your truck and it's not forced dispatch, you know, you get to do what you want, but that can be a double-edged sword. These dispatchers are trying to move freight. I get that. And I'm trying to make money. Hopefully they get that. And hopefully we can meet in the middle. But there are times when you just have to be like, not it. And you have to be okay with the decisions that you make. I was okay with sitting all weekend. I was going to get a restart out of it. You know. But I had to come to the conclusion that this is what was going to happen. At the end of the day, he does hold the cards. So sometimes you have to run a fade. Sometimes you have to run a bluff. But you have to remember that a bluff is just that. If he calls you out on it, you know, you're going to get found out. But he was trying to run a fade on me, and I out-bluffed him. Situations like that are where it pays to know who you're dealing with. There's a lot of psychology that goes along here. I'm not saying you have to get a PhD. You just have to understand the personality of who you're dealing with. And after a while, you get used to these people because they pulled the same con on you so many times. It's really not anything novel anymore. You know, I know when this guy's hustling me, you know. But you also have to know the freight and what you're dealing with, because a lot of times, the higher the load pays to a particular area, you learn really quick that the reason that load pays so well is because you're going to take it in the shorts on the back end. We've got several loads like that. You know, a couple of them I don't mind, a couple of them I just absolutely won't do. But then you also have to remember that a lot of the reasons why you're turning down a particular load. I don't turn down a lot of loads because I hate where they're going. I turn down a lot of loads because I don't like the situations that they're in. A lot of the loads I turn down on paper are really good paying loads. So why do I turn them down? Well, it's because of the circumstances surrounding them. We used to go to Associated Grocers, AWG. Well, it was affiliated, and now it's AWG. Is that AWG now? What is it in South Haven, Mississippi? And LiQWYD is a garbage company. I said it. Never had a good experience at any of them. Just absolutely horrible people to deal with. There's no parking on any of their lots. It's just a sucky place to go. Well, the one in South Haven, Mississippi, they want you there, but there's no place to park. You say you can park on the street. Yeah, right next to all these no parking signs. They won't let you park on the property, but the nearest place to park is 25 minutes away. And I was going there, and they used to let us park around. Well, I'll tell you what, the city got tired of trash. The city got tired of pee bottles. The city got tired of people taking a dump on the street. You know, it really got that bad. And the city put no parking. There's no parking anywhere around there now. And I asked the guy the last time I was there, do they ticket us? Because there are clearly truck spots parked out front. And he said, I'm not going to say they will. I'm not going to say they won't. He said he was in a tough spot because he can't say anything. He said, it just depends if that cop shows up. And here's the thing. If that cop shows up due to a complaint, if somebody calls in, he'll show up. He'll write everybody a parking ticket. And LiQWYD will not allow anybody to park on their property. But they want you there. They want you there. They want you there waiting. And when they call you, you got 15 minutes to get to the guard shack. You're parked 25 minutes away. And with E-Log, it makes it hard. I mean, truthfully, if it wasn't for E-Log, I would just go and roll in at my appointment time and go back to bed because you're going to be in the door. But that's one of those that got to be such a pain that I just quit doing because of the customer. But sometimes it's just like with places like Tyson, National Beef, hauling meat, it's something completely different. A lot of these meat companies, they give you such a broad window and a deadline time that they expect you to sit there and wait for it. I'm of the opinion that I shouldn't have to wait for it. You have an appointment time, you know when it needs to be loaded, but sometimes they run it all the way out to the end and you have no choice. So you have to figure out how much your day's worth. Is your day worth that? How much money should you be making a day? As an owner-operator, you need to be making at a minimum of $750 to $800 a day. You're not making that sitting. And a lot of these meat plants are, you know, it's a 200 to 300 mile deadhead to get to some of them, depending where you're at. So I don't haul a lot of that. Now, there are a few loads that I do, like I have to get out of the house, and that's how I get out of the house. But at the same time, some of these loads just are not worth the hassle, so you turn them down. But here's the thing. Sometimes, if it's going in a direction you want to go, or it's going to accomplish something that you need, you take them. It's a fine line, and you have to figure out how to make these loads work for you. We all understand that they have freight to move, but it's not your job to worry about X, Y, and Z over here. It's your job to make sure you're making money. So when is it time to give in? Well, sometimes you just kind of have to look at the situation and the circumstance and realize that you need to know how far to push. You can't be a complete jerk, but you still need to be firm. It's a fine line. But you also have to know who you're dealing with and which dispatcher you're dealing with. You can push some further than others. There's some you don't want to push at all. They say it's not personal, but sometimes it feels that way. And sometimes you just have to take a particular load because it's going to get you out of where you're at. You know, I took this load that went by the house. I didn't want it. I didn't want it at all. But I wanted something with a little more legs on it, but it got me by the house. It got me, you know, I'm doing a restart, And when I turn around, the load I'm picking up out of here is going to put me in a good spot. So a little bit of forward thinking sometimes can help. I mean, if it gets you where you're at, sometimes you just have to give a little, and you end up getting a lot more on the back end. So at the end of the day, it really is about what's on the back end. You know, is this going to accomplish what I need to do? Running around being unreasonable because you're mad isn't a way to approach these people. Like I've said before, if you do that, they'll just give you the first piece of crap to get you gone and off their board. You got to work with them, but sometimes you've got to cut the malarkey early. And just like my deal with my dispatcher, it was rapidly getting out of hand, and I had to cut it off. And right then and there, I did cut it off. You know, was he happy? No. Did I care? No. But at the same time, I accomplished what I needed to accomplish. I felt that lately he'd been starting to push me a little more than he probably should have. And I felt like I was getting a little bit abused. And I went and cut that off. So it is what it is. Sometimes you have to reset your boundaries, but at the end of the day, you still need to remember you got to work with these people and you've got to make money, and it's a balance. When it comes to making money in this industry, it all comes down to long-term thinking. The end of the day really is the most important thing. If you giving in a little means you're going to make a little more on the back end, that's what you want. Too many people these days are too concerned about the now and not really thinking about the later. The now is important, don't get me wrong, but the later is just as important. Is your attitude going to restrict what happens in the later? Because if it is, you need to kind of, like I said, find a little balance. Arguing with people just isn't a whole lot, but sometimes you do have to stand your ground with some of these things. And like I said, this is why it comes down to understanding who you're dealing with. I've been hustled a lot. I know this guy and I know how he acts. Now, sometimes you think a dispatcher's hustling you, and no, they're not. You know, they're just being themselves. They don't realize what they're doing. It's just part of who they are. But if you recognize the game and you've been in it, like, you know, as long as I have, as long as the other people, you know, 5-6 years, easily you should be able to identify it. You know, if you start recognizing the shuck and jive and the hustle, that's one of those things that, worked carefully, you can really work that to your advantage. But if not carefully, that kind of crap will run you out of the business, and it'll give you some real hard feelings towards the people that you're working for. Can't have hard feelings towards these guys, because at the end of the day, you still have to work with them. So, when it comes to standing your ground, use a lot of discretion. Get to know these people. Don't take anything personally, like I've said a dozen times. And you start learning how to read these guys, you can figure out what's going to be on the back end, because you know the deal, you know the situation, you know the run, and you know the predictability of what you're doing. You know, it all comes down to that at the end. How is this going to make you money? I've talked about this before, and I'll talk about it again, but I want you guys to be profitable. But I don't want you guys making a menace of yourself because you're upset. It's a give and take, but if you learn how to work with these people, you can make a lot of money. So that's why we're out here. We're not out here for our health, trust me. I've seen them. Anyhow, y'all take it easy. Be profitable, guys, and we'll see you next video.